And scriptures
on air.
Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of the FS On Air podcast. I'm here with your boy, Jornk.
Hello.
And we are here to talk about a very special project, Supaidaman. And me and Jornk are here to give you some deets because we've worked very closely on the project together. And we have the other co-writer for the series here with us today to help us talk about it. Say hello, Senna.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me.
I think we're all very excited to, just take a look back at what we've been through and look forward to what's coming with the series in the future. But before we do that, we have just a couple of things to go over. So I'll start with the first few things, and you can talk about the last few if you don't mind, Mr. Lonkett.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So, first order of business, because it's been a minute since our last episode was recorded, Plasma Man Season 2 wrapped about a month or so ago, and I'm very happy to say that that's the case. It was definitely a bit shorter than I originally thought it was going to be, but I'm still happy with it, and I didn't want to stretch it beyond what I reasonably could, given its slimmer story aspirations than the first season, perhaps. I still think it turned out pretty good, so yeah, that's done. And Scream FS Plus was announced, converted into a pre-written project. It had its first session, and it has been on a bit of a hiatus for a bit, but it's supposed to be coming back soon, so who knows. Maybe by the time this one's uploaded, it already will have, so keep an eye out for that one either way. And of course, Legion Lost is back at it again in the middle of its third episode. I have it on good authority from our Lord and Savior Charles Jesus that some big stuff is about to go down, so don't miss that one.
He's gonna put Star Sapphire in there. That's what's gonna happen. Spoiler.
Real? The Miss Marvel show already beat us to live action Star Sapphire. Hard to tell you. But, yeah. And why don't you go over our last two on our recap list there, Mr. Lonkett?
Yeah, very well. So, we have some big news for two of our latest Spider-Man projects on FS, Marvel FS that is. Tangled Webs and The Jornk Cut have both ended their second acts and are entering the final acts of their scripts. It's pretty big. I find it funny how both me and Nigerian have been making similar progress, and we both have Spider-Man projects. And we both happen to have the Enforcers, but no, it's been great. It's been great that we've been able to make this kind of progress, especially since just speaking as someone who's only directed one project beforehand, and that was a nightmare. But no, I'm just glad of how everything's going, and I'm glad that people seem to be enjoying it.
I think it's well earned. You've done a pretty good job with it, and I'm actually very impressed with our progress. We've done pretty well, as has Nigerian, despite having to take due time off just to get his university stuff in order, which is all fine and good. They'll probably finish around the same time. It must have been fate after we made that podcast episode. They're tied together for eternity.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's a good thing.
And of course, the big one, FSFF 22, was announced and will be debuting in early July. So we will see you then. I know you all are crafting up some incredible shorts for us to see. And
I'm crafting something.
Yeah, we'll see you there. Last one's was quite exciting, and I can't wait to talk about your work after that's done this year.
Yeah, that's fun. I get to talk about your project, and you get to talk about mine. That's the fun part.
Exactly. That's always the most fun part. That way, there's no bias at all.
Oh yeah, no bias. Don't worry, guys. I've heard some intel from a few of the participants this year. That we're going to be getting we may be getting a few new entries. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. It's always one of my favorite times of an FS year, if you may call it that.
Always an exciting time, the film festival. Looking forward to it.
All right. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into our Supaidaman discussion. As you all know, before we start, I would like to take some time and give a shout out to our wonderful friend Spider, who came up with the idea for the series, pitched it to me back in 2020, back when the tokusatsu fandom in fan scripture was almost a twinkle in its eye, very low key at the time, and only a couple of us were really into it. That's when we really began discussing this idea for a reboot of the classic Toei adaptation of Spider-Man all the way back in 1971, I think it was. I
think
might
so.
be wrong.
I forgot which year it exactly was.
No, 1978.
Yeah, that sounds
Just
right.
looked it up.
Right. And it's kind of funny because, believe it or not, they completely had the licensing rights to use any aspect of the character they wanted and approval from Stan Lee and Marvel, but they ultimately just decided to take some of the bare essentials and create what was essentially an original character just wearing a costume that was vaguely similar to 616 Spider-Man at the time. And it's cool now because he's actually comics canon as of a couple of years ago. I think it was I forget what comic it was that canonized him. I think it was the comic version of Spider-Verse.
It was the comic version of the comic version of Spider-Verse, yeah. And then like there's another Spider-Verse related comic where they had him once again fight Professor Monster, and then they had him return. They fought like Morlun again. Superior Spider-Man. He got to meet Takia. Except one thing that I don't like is that in like the original Spider-Verse comic, they have like these little brackets around whatever Takia says to signify that he's speaking Japanese because he's a Japanese Spider-Man. But in like when he returns in that for another crossover, they just don't have those brackets there. So it's like, well, what the fuck is he speaking English now? What's going
Maybe he
on?
learned
I don't know.
English.
It's just
Who knows?
weird when you take that into account.
Like I was saying, it was all Spider was the original creator of the series. He was working with us very closely through season 1 and through the second half of season 2. He did ultimately retire, but we have all respect for him, and we can only hope that the episodes that, as of a few episodes ago, have been mostly written by me and my talented friend Senna. We can only hope to live up to his vision for the series, and we hope that you all will enjoy the completion of the second arc and the coming movie, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Spider should be contributing some things for Web of Crossing Fates.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
As am I. It's gonna be fun to write, for sure.
So, I guess let's just go back to the beginning. I know that he did talk to us separately before we created our little group chat to decide what we're gonna do, but how did he pitch it to you exactly? I know that he probably went to you even before he went to me.
Spider didn't really pitch it to me either. I remember it was around the time I think we finished Green Lantern a little bit after, and I told him that I really enjoyed working on that script with him and I wanted to work on something with him in the future. And then he told me that there was this was around the time that I was starting to get into Kamen Rider a lot as well. He just told me that I'm working on this new project with Proteus. Do you want to help? And he didn't tell me anything about it, if I recall correctly. And then I said okay. And then I was invited to that group chat was created, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, that was kind of surreal at the time. In fact, like, it's kind of surreal to think about it now because I think me and you Senna were really the first to get into as much tokusatsu as him, and now Jornk has legitimately seen almost
more than
the
everyone
entire
else.
Modern Kamen Rider series.
No, I've watched all of Heisei, and I've watched I've been watching Reiwa, and a bit of
when will you watch Showa?
Yeah,
we gotta do the full Showa watch.
I'm sorry. I literally have no idea what you're talking about.
Been getting some Sentai in there, but not as much. But still like an okay amount. But obviously, I do like Kamen Rider more than I do Sentai, and I have watched a bulk of Kamen Rider.
Even so, I can definitely see why, aside from being a fan of Spider-Man and it being a Marvel server, why it made sense to go back and revisit and maybe even improve upon some of the ideas presented by the original Spider-Man tokusatsu show, because it perhaps had a much shorter run and wasn't as ultimately long-lasting at first as the show which came 2 years later and has defined tokusatsu for years, the original Kamen Rider, now we call Ichigo. Thinking back to the first arc of the series, it's very similar basically to the entirety of the original show, even with some of our elements like the cartridges and the newer machine BEM. It's very, especially the first episode, is very similar to how the original Tokusatsu Spider-Man show starts, and I liked how we were able to make some cool references and incorporate some stuff from the original show. My personal favorite being the fact that we included a reference to the Spider-Man boogie, which is one of the best things that was ever related to the Spider-Man character.
I've got to say, and I think I said, I'm not sure if I've said this in the podcast before, maybe I have, that, like, you know, Supaidaman was my first tokusatsu ever, and I have watched it. I remember that it's really funny when you take into account the original concept of the Spider-Man boogie. It was made by Professor Monster to, like, emit certain frequencies that only Spider-Man could hear to, like, make him, like, be really hurt by the sound waves, right? So then, and the band themselves were robots, so what happens is Spider-Man pulls up, he finds them performing, and he fucking shoots them with Marveler, because it has, like, machine guns on it. And then it's like, yeah, well, they won't be doing that anytime. They won't be doing that again anytime soon.
I'm honestly surprised that got approved, considering that, like, you know, I mean, I know that considering that they opted to be more original, they probably had less issues with the licensing, but, like, the original...
Stanley's, like, been very, he was very public about how he liked how different it was.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
I was only saying that I found it surprising.
Stanley has said nice things about each Spider-Man, including Takuya Yamashiro. But for Nicholas Hammond, he fucking shat on that guy.
Was it him specifically or just the show? The show I get because it uses none of his rogues gallery, and basically the suit is the only thing that's remotely similar.
I didn't like the show. Chucky, you can just cut out what I'm saying in this part and replace it with a clip from the Nicholas Hammond show I'm gonna send you. It'll be great. But anyways, yeah, it's kind of interesting when you even look back at how much of an influence that show had on other popular toku, because not all people know this, but you know, obviously Sentai came before Supaidaman, but Supaidaman was the show that influenced Super Sentai, and as a result, Power Rangers to use more mecha. The reason you got so many mecha now is kind of on Spider-Man. So it's funny when people are like, the Japanese Spider-Man shows like Power Rangers, when in reality, I guess you could say Power Rangers is like Japanese Spider-Man.
I mean, yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. Although now I wonder if we'll be able to say that for much longer now that Power Rangers is creating all original footage. Which I don't know how they're going to get the budget for that, but I guess
won't, and it will die, and it will be a happy ending.
I think Spider's ideas for the casting were, I mean, some of them were pretty obvious at the time, especially because, like, he had just gotten me and Senna into Kamen Rider build, but I think even aside from that, he chose an excellent actor for our main man, Takuya, otherwise known as Banjo from Kamen Rider build, and many other things. Like, he's moving up in the Japanese film industry as of late. Good for him.
Recently he got cast in some kind of zombie show, or was it a movie?
It's fun. A lot of Connor actors went that way. What's his name? The guy from Drive.
Yeah, the guy from Drive.
He got cast, something like that too, yeah. And he was posting about it. My brother was following him on Instagram, and he was posting about it all the time. And then there's another, I can't remember, there's another actor who kept doing the same thing. It was funny.
The guy who plays Forza.
It seems like a common thing.
The guy who plays Forza, he was like in this one weird horror movie where a bunch of kids are in a school, and there's like these games they have to play, and kids die or whatever. He was in that one. That one looks...
Games!
Yeah, no, it's not Squid Games. It predated Squid Games.
Bad joke. But, yeah, and I mean, we already talked about the first arc a little bit, but, I definitely think that was most interesting to figure out. Like I said, it was similar, but it was like a same but different kind of feeling, especially as we got to the ending of the first arc. We kept a lot of stuff the same, but I did like Spider's idea to save the heavier use of Marveler until the latter end of the first arc.
Something else, if I may add, I enjoyed about the first arc is the one of the unique things, as we were talking before, how it's so different than the regular Spider-Man, is Taki is a motocross racer, and dirt bikes, and I quite enjoyed. I wrote a lot of those scenes, and I remember because I watched the first episode for the first time when I went to write when we wrote the first episode.
Exactly. You wrote all the ones after that, but I also watched it up, which is why I wrote the first motorbike scene almost exactly mirroring the first time you see motorbikes and stuff. But those are stuff that we'll get into it later. I almost missed some of that stuff, but obviously it makes sense why after season 1 Takio would decide, maybe motorbiking is something that's like, I gotta move up in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, I think, too, it was a way to change it up.
Right.
Because I actually did when we finished first season. Before Spider came up with that idea, I think it was Spider. Yeah. Anyway, I was even throughout season 1, to tell you the truth, I was a little bit worried that I was writing. We wrote repetitive, that the motocross would become repetitive, which it didn't, thankfully. So, but I think it was very good to have to change it up in the second arc, and it made sense story-wise too. It's not just from a writing perspective, but anyway, I did like that a lot. That was something very unique. I don't think any Spider-Man that exists before has that sort of background.
Right.
And another thing I enjoyed quite a bit is the whole everything with his father, which we wrote I think the first episode, and then with the chameleon episode, and even the end of season 1. When he was visiting his grave. Sorry, I meant arc 1. I like that a lot because it's kind of similar to Uncle Ben, but in a way it's completely different. And I think it just adds to the uniqueness of Takio, which I really like. It's his original character, and it's done very well. And I'm very happy that we were able to write it in our own way and flesh it out and add more lore. I enjoy that quite a bit.
I agree.
I did like how in the original show, you see Takia's like pretty like when you see him like before like he kicks into the whole Spider-Man stuff, he's a little laid back and he's like kind of joking around with his family. But like when his father comes in, he's like very respectful, and I kind of like how we were able to expand on his bond with his father here too.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Exactly.
It's a very unique relationship.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's a unique gimmick, especially because like Peter Parker ultimately, while he still has a lot of loss when he loses Uncle Ben, ultimately that's just his drive to like get his own life together, because he's still very young. He's not even out of high school yet when he first loses his uncle, so he's still got a lot of his life ahead of him. Whereas you can tell Takia is like, he's a little older. He's just on the cusp of being a working professional, and so when he loses his father, he's not just gotta shape up for his own sake, but he's got 2 siblings to worry about. Then later on, he's got Hitomi, his girlfriend, who's a photographer for one of the local newspapers. I'm glad that we brought her in later on. I feel like Hitomi in the original show was kind of like a nod to the original comics, and she basically has Peter Parker's job.
Yeah, that's something I did like that we kept there, because I thought it was a cool idea.
I think so too, and it's also because we moved as the show progressed, especially in the second arc. We don't have as many scenes with Takio and his family as there were in the first arc, so Hitomi sort of fills that gap.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very good one to have.
Spider did point out to me when we were getting into the second arc that like we had so many of those scenes in the first season that we probably should cut down those a little bit, but I do think including more of Hitomi's stuff did sort of fill that gap, especially the episode where she's dealing with the employee at her work who's maybe getting a little too attached. Yes, Mac playing that role, of course, helped cement that as one of the more iconic ones.
He put the words Vicky Smalls into a translator. Dear God. Glad to see it.
Speaking of, we probably should go over some of the monsters of the week, because I think we've got quite a few iconic ones. Why don't you start with some of your favorites, Jornk? I think we probably all differ a bit on what we consider the best ones, but obviously I think everyone who's played a Monster of the Week has done great, and I like that we were sort of able to keep a bit of an open casting door for some of those just to make that a bit easier when we started.
Oh yeah, okay. So First thing I want to state is that I really love the aesthetic we went with. I think it is fit very well, all things considered. So I think my favorite off the bat was definitely Beetle. First of all, everyone already knows I'm a big Beetle activist. You know, I always talk about Beetle from Marvel in general, but the design here, it was just incredible, and the fact that it was for Amazoness, that she got to be Beetle, I think was awesome. And so I just think that her getting to be Beetle and the fight scenes she had were incredible. Those were really awesome. If I were to look at second place, it is admittedly kind of hard because we chose some really good designs. I know the one for Scorpion. That one looks raw. That one looks raw as
That was
hell.
pretty good.
Helps that his actor is one of the most iconic side roles from Kamen Rider
Yeah.
build.
Yeah.
Sumi.
Sure.
But I think what I'd choose for second place, and it's a bit of a rare one, would be actually the Hydro-Man Elemental. I really like the design for that one. I think that one is probably the ideal Hydro-Man look. Because in my opinion, Hydro-Man in general, like in just Spider-Man mythos, hasn't gotten a lot of great designs. There's that one from the Task cartoon where he has like that I don't know what you call it, what shirt he has, but that's the only one I can really think of for Hydro-Man. Aside from that, there's not a lot of significant designs I can think for the guy.
Admittedly, like we did struggle to find some
Yeah, no,
designs for the show,
a lot of
but
them.
so when we did find ones that were actually really good, it was pretty satisfying.
Yeah, we had a lot of trouble. Some of them.
And and another thing I like is, while a lot of the powers, there is a lot of explanations for how they get these abilities. I do like that actually our artist, who is a friend of mine who does the art of our avatars, she actually told me the thing I don't like about Hydro-Man is that his story is he basically interacts with water and gets water powers and calls himself Hydro-Man. It's even by Marvel standards, it's a little bit cheesy.
Or cheesy.
Yeah, so just to see a different origin for Hydro-Man, I think that is kind of groundbreaking.
It's a fair point.
And I did at least we weren't. I did. It was a little different when we finally put it to paper how it was conceived. I'll get into my actual favorites in a minute, but I did like that we were able to keep Spider and Senna did most of the work for conceiving the Arc 1 Villains of the Week, but I was, at least when we did early planning, able to conceive some for Part 2, namely Hydro-Man and Molten Man, and I like that we were sort of able to keep a minor connection between those two because it also created somewhat of a flow between the episodes, which helped as we transitioned slowly from strictly Monster of the Week, like we did a lot in the first arc, to a bit more serialized in the second one, though we still kept aspects of the Monster of the Week formula.
Yeah, for sure. It's like the way we did it, I think, flowed very well, as many tokusatsu shows do. First 10 episodes or so are Monster of the Week, typically, and then they move on to some other long-lasting villains. And I from the get-go, I wanted to make sure we did that.
Right,
Because,
and I mean, they kind of have
story.
to when they
Yeah.
go on for 40 episodes.
Exactly,
Keep it
exactly.
fresh.
Yeah, and we did that. At least I think we did that fairly well.
I'd say
Yeah,
so.
I agree.
It definitely, things haven't felt really repetitive to me, and and of course recently in the episodes we've been having, there's been a lot of interesting plot directions.
My favorite is probably Yuseru / Gibbon,
Ooh, yeah,
played
Gibbon.
by Johnny T. Tears. I like how we created that almost knowing that he would be perfect for that. So when he said yes, that was immensely satisfying.
Yeah, one of the things that I like is for the Monsters of the Week is what we're able to do related to that is, of course, because a lot of pretty much all the actors are from Kamen Rider, if I'm not mistaken, but it allowed us kind of just to have fun with that and reference, not even reference, but it just allowed us to have fun choosing those actors. And in cases like Johnny, we were able to tailor that to him, which I don't think happened much, to be honest with you. But I just enjoyed sort of picking actors from whatever random shows and putting them in as fitting too, not necessarily random. But yeah, so I do agree with you about for Johnny as Monster of the Week. I guess to finish off this section, I don't really have a favorite Monster of the Week. I thought none of them really trumped the other, so to speak. I think everyone did fantastic job, and they're all fun to write. If I had to choose one, it's not really a monster of the week. It's more one of the mainstay ones, and it's a very biased pick. For me, it's Electro, because I sort of I had a vision for the character because I chose an actor from Kamen Rider Fi's, Rei Akiyama, excuse me, who played Kamen Rider Kaiza, and the only reason I did that because I wanted to shape the character to kind of be how he acts in that show, because I think it was very fitting. And
agree.
it's a very, very biased pick for that selection for that reason. But Roos did a very good job playing him.
Yeah.
He played him perfectly, and I think it was just a lot of fun to write. So if I had to choose one, it would be him, for sure.
I agree, and I think Spider knows a little bit about that, which is why we were able to sort of model him after. Is it Kusaka or Kukasa? I forget.
Kusaka.
You're right, Kusaka. Thank you for providing us with that GIF of now then.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
You'll just have to die.
I made that months in advance. And I said we have to use this.
You saw the future.
Yeah, it's funny because though I don't know how, but I tried to find the clip on the internet and I couldn't find it. So I said I think I remember it's in this episode, and I went to the list I have downloaded. It was a random episode 39 or something, and lo and behold, it was there. I have no idea how I figured that out, just from memory. But yeah, so I wanted to make sure
we've been there. And Chucky's talked about it before in other ways, but I had to help him torrent a whole episode of a show for I think what amounted to a couple of seconds clip in his Legion Lost teaser trailer. So we have all been there of having to download obscenely large files just for something that you just question, is this really worth it? But by that point you're like, maybe not, but I'm in too deep.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad I just got the episode right in the first try. That was the thing, because I thought I was gonna have to download a bunch of episodes, but for some reason I have a good feeling it's gonna be this one. I didn't even look at the description of the episode. I guess I just remembered it so much I didn't have to guess.
As I alluded to earlier, moving into the second arc was really interesting because while we didn't drop the Monster of the Week, in fact we still have the first couple of episodes are pretty similar to the Arc 1 formula, which is fitting because we're showing a very gradual transition in everyone's lives. Of course, that's where we bring in one of the GOAT villains, Chuck E. Cheese's as Noriaki Kase, who also has a great fan cast as Soichi or Evata from Build.
Yeah, that was this. I remember we were spitballing with a lot of different actors for this role, a lot of the big name villains in Kamen Rider, and I think at the end of the day, he wasn't even my choice. I chose someone else, who that actor, I can't even find him anymore. He disappeared from the world. But anyway, this was a good choice. It turned out very well, and Chucky plays him perfectly, as all characters are played perfectly. I think by everyone. Chucky especially, though, it was a good choice.
Oh yeah, Chucky definitely going goblin mode, just as I would have expected.
Not to our own horn, of course, but I think we had a good gradual build up to his presence later on. I think Chucky, of course, contributed to how well we were able to accomplish that. So big props to him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
I also like on the topic of the villain of Green Goblin, I guess, as I'm happy how it turned out, how we wrote it. I think it was Spider who kind of came up with the idea. He's not a one-sided villain. At the end of the day, he's not really a villain, right? He sort of has the yokai inside of him, but he's been around for thousands of years, etc., etc. But I think the dynamic of having that really turned out well and created a unique character, different from anyone else, and that's something that I'm very happy with the season, and glad that came to fruition.
I think it made an interesting contrast to the first arc as well, because the Mashin BEM and the villains that are mostly adapted from the original Spider-Man tokusatsu show they're explicitly evil, even cheesily so, but this Kase is more of a gray morality type, one who wants to fight evil but perhaps chooses the wrong path and attempts to fight evil with more evil, because initially he chooses to accept the yokai taking over his body because he doesn't want to see more innocent people die due to the fact that in ancient times the elementals were going to destroy the world and end millions of innocent people's lives, and he saw that as his opportunity to end the chaos.
Yeah, for sure. And it's as you said, it was a nice contrast. I suppose the whole second arc is all about contrast to the first, but or shaking things up, so to speak. Professor Monster was very one-sided villain in comparison, right? So it was nice to have that difference.
Not that Professor Monster is bad or anything.
No, not at all. It's a different character.
Bruce gave
Very,
us
very
a
good job,
good portrayal of that character.
Yeah, just a different character entirely. That's all.
And we got some great characters and castings for our elementals, like you mentioned earlier. Perhaps Rai Akiyama being the one that sort of reaches out from the pack as the one who sort of wants to, I guess, I don't know, like there's a lot of shows in the genre that have that sort of dynamic where everybody else is doing their thing, and then there's just one character that has like their own journey, is like, through all of this I'm doing my own thing and I'm gonna destroy all of you for my own personal gain. So I kind of liked having him there as that kind of character. And you've got Amazonas trying to figure the whole situation out, kind of conflicted, and then you've got Oda just kind of messing things up, undercutting Kase. And I think that as we get toward the end of it, that dynamic really comes to a head, and that was really fun to write.
Looney, I know I sound like a broken record, but Looney's doing a great job playing Oda, and he's also another one of those characters. He's casted as one of the characters from Gaim, very similar, I guess. But it's just creating a nice dynamic. Sorry, I'm repeating myself a lot, I realize now, but it's just my thoughts, I guess.
No problem. Feel free to share your thoughts. But yeah, by the time this is up, the conclusion to the second arc will already be up on our server, and in between then, we'll just be thinking forward to the future about what we will do with Web of Crossing Fates. We haven't had much time to work on it yet because Spider is still going to help us with a little bit on it, but we've been working on Meteor War after he mostly decided to move to pre-written things and not wanting to direct much live action stuff anymore, which I respect, and I definitely can't wait to see what we will do with Web of Crossing Fates.
I like the fact that for Supaidaman we've been pulling elements from multiple eras, because I feel like each era has something that's great about it, and and I feel like a lot of them can be blended together, and that's another great thing about FS in general, is that we have the opportunity to blend those aesthetics we love so much that may not always have the opportunity to mix like that because of I don't know, just because of business in general.
Yeah, for sure.
I think some of the first arc is definitely more influenced by some of the older stuff, because that was when Spider included, some of us were going back and watching some of those older shows as
we're taking direct references from it, inspiration.
Right, and I think later is inspired by some of the more modern stuff. In conformity with our rules about not leaking stuff, I will try to give y'all a little taste of what we might be seeing for Web of Crossing Fates in the near future. I definitely think this will be, as you might imagine, a scale a bit bigger than a lot of the show. I feel like this will be sort of expanding our scope a little bit to
for sure,
maybe more, not entirely Hollywood-esque, but just more grand scale superhero fare that's more common nowadays. Yeah, here's what I'll say. I think this is good. If you liked the scenes, if you like seeing Marveler in both arcs, we are gonna blow your minds with this one.
That's a good way of putting it.
That's about all I'll say.
We shan't.
And I know the other two will fully agree with me here, but I like I alluded to earlier, we appreciate a lot of Spider's work on bringing the series into creation and propelling it forward up to only a couple episodes ago from where we are right now, and of course we would not be where we are with it without him, and we just like to extend our sincere thanks to him for it, and we only hope that we will be able to honor his vision for it with what we do going forward, and of course him helping us with Web of Crossing Fates a little bit it'll help us a lot.
Sure. I echo that. Yeah, I'm very thankful for. Like you said, we would not be here if it wasn't for him, and he's done a lot of great work on it, and I'm very honored that he's passed it down to us just to do on our own for the most part. I hope we can live up to his expertise, I guess, for lack of a better word.
For sure. And I think that'll be it from us, unless either one of you has anything else you want to say.
That's all for me. Just want to say again, thanks so much for having me. I always really enjoyed being on this podcast. It's
Of
always a
course,
pleasure.
we love having you. I think this is the 4th time, but we'll have you on as many more times as we can have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
All right, and I think that will be it from us. But as always, I never came up with a standard catchphrase for leaving
I'll
these
see
off.
you
So I
guys
guess I'll
on
just
the next
say
Angry Joe show. 4 hours. That's what Angry Joe says.
okay, bye.